Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story comes from a guy we'll call Ryan, 29 years old, from Vancouver. He was a software developer who'd spent years watching his friends fall into the same trap in Thailand, the Freelancer trap, and he swore it would never happen to him. He had rules. He had boundaries. He understood the game better than most because he'd seen it destroy relationships, bank accounts, and the self-respect of men he considered smarter than himself. But understanding the game and being immune to it are two very different things. What Ryan learned the hard way is that loneliness doesn't care about your rules, and chemistry doesn't respect your boundaries. He thought he could outsmart a system that's been perfected over decades by women who read men like open books. He thought recognizing the red flags would be enough to keep him safe. It wasn't. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you've ever sworn you'd never do something and then did it anyway, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story might hit closer to home than you'd like to admit. Ryan will take it from here. I'll be straight with you, eh? Back in Vancouver, I had what most people would call a good life. Software developer at a mid-sized tech company in Gastown, pulling in about $95,000 a year, which goes further in Vancouver than you'd think if you're careful about it. I had a decent one-bedroom apartment in Yaletown. Nothing fancy, but the building was new, and I could see a sliver of False Creek from my living room window if I stood at the right angle. I had friends, a solid group of guys I'd known since university, most of them in tech too. We'd do the Vancouver thing, hiking on weekends when it wasn't raining, breweries in East Van, Canucks games when we could afford the tickets. On paper, I was doing fine, but paper doesn't capture the feeling of coming home to an empty apartment at 8:30 on a Tuesday night after another day of writing code for an app that helps people order groceries slightly faster than they already could. Paper doesn't capture the silence, the kind that's so thick you can hear the hum of your fridge from 2 rooms away. Paper doesn't show you that I'd been single for 6 months after Emma left me, and that those 6 months felt like 6 years. Emma and I were together for 2 years. She was a yoga instructor, which should have been my first clue we were fundamentally incompatible, because I'm about as zen as a caffeinated squirrel. She was all about mindfulness and presence and living in the moment. And I was all about optimizing systems and planning 5 steps ahead. We met at a friend's birthday party, hit it off because she thought tech guys were interesting and I thought yoga instructors were hot. And we convinced ourselves that opposites attract meant something more than just good sex and incompatible life philosophies. She left me in May 2023. Didn't even have the decency to blindside me with it, honestly. She'd been pulling away for months. Spending more time at the studio, taking weekend workshops on Bowen Island without inviting me, coming home smelling like sandalwood and someone else's cologne. When she finally told me she'd met someone, another instructor named River or Creek or some other body of water, I wasn't even surprised, just tired. She packed her stuff over a weekend, while I sat on the couch pretending to watch hockey, but actually watching her move through our apartment like a ghost, erasing herself from my life 1 box at a time. She left the French press because she'd bought a new one. Left the framed photo of us in Tofino because what was she going to do with that? Left me sitting in an apartment that suddenly felt 3 times bigger and completely empty. The months after were a blur of work and routine and trying not to feel pathetic. I come home, heat up something from Whole Foods, sit at my desk, and either do more work or scroll through Reddit or watch YouTube videos until my eyes hurt. My friends tried. Danny would text asking if I wanted to grab drinks. Marcus would invite me to his place for dinner, with his wife and their new baby. But there's only so many times you can be the single guy at a couple's dinner before you start feeling like a charity case. I started declining invites, started spending more time alone. Started wondering if this was just what life was now, work and sleep, and the occasional dopamine hit from a video game or a good meal. That's when the Thailand conversation started coming up more frequently. See, most of my friend group had done the Thailand thing at some point. Danny had spent 3 months in Chiang Mai right after university, working remotely and living like a king on $1,500 a month. Marcus had gone to Bangkok for his bachelor party and came back with stories that his wife absolutely did not want him sharing in detail. Even the married guys talked about Thailand, the way you talk about an ex-girlfriend you still thought about sometimes, fondly, with a mix of nostalgia and regret. But there were cautionary tales too. Trevor, a guy I'd worked with at my previous job, had gone to Thailand for 2 weeks and come back married to a Bargirl from Pattaya. That marriage lasted 8 months and cost him about $40,000 by the time the divorce was finalised, and she'd moved back to Thailand with half his savings. Another guy, James, had fallen for a freelancer in Bangkok, spent 6 months convinced they were building a real relationship, until she disappeared one day with his laptop, his camera, and about 10 grand in cash he'd been keeping in his apartment like an idiot. We'd have barbecues at Danny's place in Kits, and the Thailand stories would come out after a few beers. The warnings were always the same. Don't fall for a bar girl. Don't fall for a freelancer. Don't think you're special. Don't give them money. Don't believe the sick buffalo story. Don't trust that the kid in the photos is actually theirs. Don't. I'd sit there with my Granville Island lager and nod along and think, yeah, I'd never be that stupid. I work in tech. I'm good with patterns and systems. I can spot a scam. The thing about loneliness, though, the thing I didn't understand then, is that it makes you want to believe. It makes you ignore patterns. It makes you think, sure, that happened to those guys, but I'm different. I'm smarter. I'll see it coming. By October 2023, Vancouver was getting dark early and rainy every day. That special kind of Vancouver rain that's not quite heavy enough to justify staying inside, but constant enough to make you miserable if you go out. I'd wake up in my apartment, the sky grey, work all day staring at my monitor. The sky still grey, finish work at 6, the sky now black, and realise I hadn't spoken to another human being out loud since saying thanks to the barista that morning. Emma had been gone 5 months, and I hadn't been on a single date. Hadn't even tried. The apps felt exhausting. Every profile read like a job application. Must love hiking, must love dogs, must have your life together. Swipe left if you're not 6 feet tall. Swipe left if you voted Conservative. Swipe left if you have any flaws whatsoever that aren't charmingly quirky in exactly the right way. I started watching YouTube videos about Thailand, not intentionally at first. The algorithm just started feeding them to me. Videos about cost of living, digital nomad vlogs, guys talking about how they left corporate jobs and now lived in Chiang Mai running online businesses and dating beautiful women and eating incredible food for $3 a meal. The comment sections were always the same mix of encouragement and warnings. Best decision I ever made. You'll never want to leave. Just watch out for the bar girls, mate. Don't be an idiot with your money. I started Googling flights. Just looking, not booking. Vancouver to Bangkok, $1,200 round trip if you were flexible with dates. I had vacation days saved up. Had money in the bank, about 90,000 Canadian from years of saving and not much spending. Because, what was I spending on? My thrilling Friday nights watching Netflix alone. I started thinking, what if I just went for a month? Cleared my head. Got some sun, worked remotely, came back refreshed. Danny talked me into it over drinks at a pub near Main Street in early November. We were sitting in a booth, rain hammering the windows, and I mentioned I was thinking about Thailand. His face lit up. Do it, he said. Seriously, do it. Best thing you could do right now. Get out of this city for a bit, get some perspective. Just promise me one thing. Promise me you won't fall for a freelancer. I laughed. I'm not an idiot, I said. Neither was Trevor, Danny said. Neither was James. These girls are professionals, man. They've been doing this since they were teenagers. They know exactly what to say, exactly how to make you feel special. You think you'll see it coming, but you won't. So just promise me, no bar girls, no freelancers. You go, you have fun, you eat good food, you get a tan, you come home. I promise, I said. I will not fall for a freelancer. I will not fall for a freelancer. He made me say it 3 times, like it was some kind of spell that would protect me. I booked the flight that night. One way to Bangkok, departing November 18th. I told my boss I'd be working remotely for a month, maybe 2. He wasn't thrilled about the time zone difference. But I'd been at the company 4 years and never took vacation, so he couldn't really say no. I told my mom I was going travelling. She asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just needed a change of scenery. She said, be careful, which is what moms say when they're worried but don't want to seem like they're worrying. The days before I left had this strange energy, like I was preparing for something bigger than just a trip. I sold my car because I wouldn't need it, gave notice on my apartment because the lease was up in December anyway, and I didn't know how long I'd be gone. Packed 2 suitcases and a backpack with clothes and my laptop and not much else. The night before my flight, I sat in my nearly empty apartment, most of my stuff in storage or sold, and felt this mix of terror and excitement that I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Like I was doing something that actually mattered. like I was choosing something for myself instead of just letting life happen to me. I landed in Bangkok on a Tuesday afternoon in late November. The heat hit me the second I stepped outside Suvarnabhumi Airport. Thick and wet and completely different from anything Vancouver ever threw at me. It was like walking into a warm bath, fully clothed. My shirt was stuck to my back before I even got to the taxi queue, but I loved it. After months of grey Vancouver rain, the heat felt like being alive. I booked a serviced apartment in Sukhumvit near Asok BTS station through some expat rental site. 600 Canadian a month for a studio with a kitchen, a decent bed and Wi-Fi fast enough to work on. The taxi ride from the airport into the city was chaos. Motorbikes everywhere, families of 4 on a single scooter, cars cutting across 3 lanes of traffic like it was nothing. The driver playing Thai pop music and chain-smoking cigarettes with the windows down. We drove past temples and malls and construction sites and street food vendors, and I pressed my face to the window like a kid, trying to take it all in. My building was down a narrow soi off Sukhumvit Road, the kind of street that barely fits 2 cars passing each other. There was a 7-Eleven on the corner, a massage place with a pink neon sign, a hole-in-the-wall restaurant with plastic stools out front where old Thai men sat drinking beer in the afternoon heat. I dragged my suitcases up 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was busted, unlocked the door to my studio, and stood there in the doorway sweating and grinning. It was small, way smaller than my Yale town apartment, but it had everything I needed. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out onto the soi, air conditioning that rattled but worked. I could hear everything, motorbikes revving, people shouting in Thai, music from somewhere. The city alive and loud and exactly what I'd needed without knowing I needed it. I dropped my bags, changed my shirt and walked back down to the 7-Eleven. Bought a big bottle of Chang beer and a bag of spicy chips I couldn't read the label on. The girl at the counter smiled at me and said something in Thai I didn't understand. I smiled back and said thank you in English, and she giggled. The beer cost 45 baht. I did the conversion in my head, like $2 Canadian. I sat on the curb outside my building in the warm evening air, drank the Chang, and thought, holy shit, I actually left. The first week was pure tourist mode. I explored the city like I was trying to memorize it. Took the BTS everywhere, those elevated trains that run above the chaos and give you this view of Bangkok stretching out forever in every direction. Ate pad thai from street carts, 40 baht for a plate that tasted better than anything I'd paid $20 for back home. Visited temples where the smell of incense mixed with the heat and everything felt ancient and sacred and completely foreign. Went to Chatterjak Market on a Saturday and got lost for hours, wandering past stalls selling vintage band t-shirts and live puppies and antique cameras and fried insects on sticks. But I was alone. That was the thing. I'd smile at people, try to chat with other foreigners in cafes or at bars, but nothing stuck. Everyone was just passing through. Tourists on 2-week holidays. Digital nomads who'd talk to you for 10 minutes and then put their headphones back on. I'd go back to my studio at night and lie in bed listening to the sounds of the soi, motorbikes and music and people living their lives and feel that familiar loneliness creeping back in. Different city, same empty feeling. By my second week, I started going to bars in Thonglor and Ekamai. Not the go-go bars, not Soy Cowboy or Nana Plaza. I knew better than that. But the upscale places where expats and locals mixed, where you could sit at a bar and maybe strike up a conversation with someone. Places that felt less obviously transactional. I'd order a cocktail, something with gin and lemongrass that cost 300 baht and tasted like Bangkok in a glass, and watch people. Groups of Thai women in expensive clothes taking photos for Instagram. Western guys with Thai girlfriends, who might be girlfriends or might be something else, hard to tell. Everyone seemed to be part of something, part of a group, or a couple, or a scene, and one was just there, alone, nursing my drink and trying not to look as pathetic as I felt. That's when I met Noon. Second week of December, a Thursday afternoon. I was at a cafe in M Quartier, this massive fancy mall near Frumfong Station, working on my laptop and trying to look busy, even though I'd finished my actual work hours ago and was mostly just refreshing Reddit. She was sitting 2 tables away, also with a laptop, wearing a white blouse and jeans and these stylish glasses that made her look smart and put together. Our eyes met when I looked up from my screen. She smiled. Not a Bargirl smile, not the practiced I want something smile I'd been warned about. Just a natural, friendly smile. I smiled back. 10 minutes later, she got up to order another coffee. And I don't know what possessed me, maybe just weeks of loneliness and the fact that she seemed normal and approachable. But I said excuse me as she walked past. She stopped. I asked if the Wi-Fi was working okay for her, because mine kept cutting out, which was a lie, my Wi-Fi was fine, but it was the only opener I could think of. She laughed and said hers was fine, maybe try reconnecting. We started talking. Her English was perfect, almost no accent, just a slight softness to certain words that made her sound even more appealing somehow. Her name was Noon. She was 27. She said she worked in marketing for a Thai company, something to do with social media management for brands. She'd studied in California for 2 years, San Diego, which explained the American-tinged English. She asked what I did. I told her software development, that I was working remotely from Bangkok for a few months. Her eyes lit up. She said she loved the idea of working remotely, loved that the world was becoming more flexible like that. We talked for maybe 20 minutes, standing there by the coffee counter while other customers squeezed past us. She was easy to talk to. Funny. Asked good questions. Seemed genuinely interested in my answers, not just waiting for her turn to talk. When we finally went back to our tables, she stopped by mine first and asked if I had line. I did. We exchanged contacts. She said, maybe we could grab dinner sometime. She knew all the good local spots tourists never found. I said I'd love that. She smiled again, that same natural smile, and went back to her table. I stared at my laptop screen for the next hour, not seeing anything, just replaying the conversation in my head and feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, maybe. Or just a possibility of connection. We texted that night. Nothing heavy, just casual chat about Bangkok, about places I should visit, about her favourite restaurants. She recommended a place in Ari, said the Khao Soi. There was the best in the city. I said I didn't know what Khao Soi was. She sent a laughing emoji and said I had so much to learn. We made plans for Saturday, dinner at the Khao Soi place, then maybe drinks after if we were having fun. Saturday came and I was nervous in a way I hadn't been nervous in years. Changed my shirt 3 times. Showed up 15 minutes early and walked around the block twice so I wouldn't seem desperate. The restaurant was exactly what she described. A small place with no English signs, plastic chairs, a few tables on the sidewalk. Noon was already there, wearing a black dress that was casual but somehow made her look incredibly elegant. She waved when she saw me. We ordered. The Khao Soi came in these massive bowls, coconut curry noodles with crispy noodles on top and chicken falling off the bone. It was incredible. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about growing up in Bangkok, about her family, about studying abroad, and how strange it was to come back to Thailand after being away. I told her about Vancouver, about the tech industry, about how sometimes you can have everything on paper and still feel like something's missing. She got that. Really got it. She said, Thai culture puts so much pressure on people to seem successful, to have the right job and the right car and the right image, but nobody talks about whether you're actually happy. We talked about happiness, about what it means, about how hard it is to find. And the whole time I kept waiting for a catch, for her to mention money or ask for something, because that's what I'd been warned about. But she didn't. She paid for her half of the dinner before I could stop her, split the bill right down the middle. When I tried to insist on paying, she refused, said this was just friends having dinner. Why should I pay for everything? We walked around Ari after dinner. It was a cool night by Bangkok standards, maybe 28 degrees, and the streets were full of people, young Thais on dates, families out for walks, street vendors selling grilled meat on sticks. She showed me a hidden art gallery in an old house, a vintage clothing shop where everything smelled like mothballs and nostalgia, a bar down an alley you'd never find unless someone showed you. We had drinks there, cocktails made with Thai herbs I couldn't pronounce. We talked about everything and nothing. And when the night ended and I put her in a taxi home, she kissed me on the cheek and said she'd had fun. Let's do it again soon. I walked back to my apartment in Sukhumvit, a 30-minute walk I barely noticed, feeling lighter than I'd felt in a year. This was it, I thought. This was what I'd come to Bangkok for without knowing I'd come for it. Not to escape Vancouver or get over Emma. To find this. To find her. We met again 2 days later. Then 3 days after that. Then it became a routine. This easy rhythm where we'd text throughout the day and make plans for the evening. She'd take me to night markets in parts of the city I'd never heard of. Places where we'd be the only non-Thais wandering between stalls, selling everything from used books to fried scorpions. We'd eat at restaurants with no English menus, where she'd order for both of us, laughing when I'd try to pronounce Thai words and get them completely wrong. She introduced me to her friends at a house party in Ari. Regular Thai people with regular jobs, graphic designers and accountants and teachers, and they welcomed me into their group like I'd always been there. 3 weeks in, we slept together. It happened naturally. No weird negotiation or transaction feeling. We'd been out dancing at a club in Phonglaw, some place with expensive cocktails and a DJ playing house music. And when we left around 2 in the morning, she asked if she could come back to my place. We took a taxi to my building in Sukhumvit. Walked up the 4 flights because the elevator was still broken, and the moment I closed the door behind us, she kissed me. Really kissed me. Not the polite cheek kisses we'd been doing. We ended up in my bed, the air conditioning struggling against the Bangkok heat, and it felt like connection. Like intimacy, like something real. After, she lay with her head on my chest and traced patterns on my skin with her finger and said this was nice. Being with someone who actually listened to her, who saw her as more than just a pretty Thai girl. I should have been happy. I was happy. But there was this small voice in the back of my head. The voice that sounded like Danny at that pub in Vancouver, saying, "Don't fall for a freelancer. Don't think you're special." I pushed it down. Noon wasn't a freelancer. She had a job. She had her own place. She paid for things. This was different. Except the more time we spent together, the more small things didn't quite add up. She was always free on weeknights, but busy most weekends. When I'd suggest we do something on a Saturday, she'd say she had family obligations or plans with girlfriends, but she'd never invite me along. I asked to see her condo once, and she said it was a mess. She was embarrassed, maybe another time. That other time never came. She had a car, a nice one, a white Honda that looked only a couple years old, but when I asked about it, she was vague about how she'd afforded it. Something about her parents helping out. Her job was another thing. She said she worked in marketing, but when I'd ask specifics about her company or what project she was working on, the answers were always general. Building brand awareness. Managing social campaigns. The company name she'd mentioned, I googled it one night after she'd left. Nothing came up. Not their website, not their social media, nothing. I told myself maybe I'd remembered the name wrong, or maybe they were a small company without much online presence. But I knew, somewhere deep down, I knew I wasn't getting the full picture. December rolled into January. Bangkok stayed hot. The cool season that wasn't really cool by Canadian standards, mid-20s during the day, perfect for sitting at outdoor cafes or wandering through parks. Noon started staying over more often, 3 or 4 nights a week. She kept a toothbrush in my bathroom, some clothes in the small closet. She'd cook for me sometimes. Simple Thai dishes like fried rice with too much fish sauce or som tam that made my eyes water and my nose run. I'd eat it and tell her it was great even when it was so spicy I could barely taste anything else. She'd laugh and say I was a terrible liar, but she appreciated the effort. I extended my stay in Bangkok, told my boss I needed another month, maybe 2. He was getting frustrated with the time zone difference, with me being in meetings at midnight Bangkok time, but I was still getting my work done, so what could he say? My apartment lease in Vancouver had ended in December and I'd put everything in storage. I had no real reason to go back. No girlfriend waiting. No apartment. Just my mum and my friends, and a city that felt greyer and colder and lonelier every time I thought about it. We took a trip to Koh Samet in early January, a long weekend getaway. I booked a bungalow on the beach, nothing fancy, but right on the sand with the sound of waves at night, and a little restaurant that served fresh seafood and cold beer. We spent 3 days swimming and lying in the sun, and having sex in the afternoon when it was too hot to do anything else. At night, we'd walk on the beach, and she'd point out constellations I didn't know, Thai names for stars that sounded like poetry. She told me about her dreams, about wanting to travel more, about maybe doing a master's degree abroad someday if she could save enough money. I told her about my dreams too, though I was realizing I didn't really have any beyond not being lonely and maybe finding something that felt like purpose. I paid for the whole trip. The bungalow, the meals, the drinks, the taxi, there and back. It felt natural. I was the one with the foreign salary, the savings, the ability to afford these things without thinking twice. She thanked me, said I was generous, said most Thai guys wouldn't treat a girl this well. I felt good about it. Felt like I was being a good boyfriend, taking care of my girlfriend the way you're supposed to. Except we never talked about what we were. Never had that conversation about being exclusive or official. It just seemed understood. She was staying at my place most nights. We were taking trips together. We'd hold hands walking down Sukhumvit. But there was always this slight distance, this feeling that I could only get so close before she'd pull back. When I'd ask about meeting her family, she'd say they lived far away, in Nakhon Ratchasima, and it wasn't the right time. When I'd suggest she stay over for a whole week, really move in temporarily, she'd say she needed to go back to her place sometimes, needed her own space, needed to not feel smothered. I tried to be understanding, tried to remember that Thai culture was different, that women here valued independence, that I shouldn't push. That's when the money requests started. Not requests exactly, at first. Just mentions. Comments. Information shared that seemed to require a response. We were lying in bed one night in late January, the air conditioning humming, and she told me her mum needed surgery. Nothing serious, she said. But the public hospital wait times were months, and her mum was in pain, arthritis in her knees, and the private hospital could do it quickly, but it wasn't cheap. 40,000 baht. I did the math. About 1,500 Canadian dollars. She wasn't asking. She was just telling me, the same way you tell your partner about any problem in your life. But the implication hung in the air between us. I thought about my rules, about Danny's warning, about all the stories I'd heard about sick buffalo and sick parents and medical emergencies that were always just plausible enough to be real, but always required cash immediately. I thought about how this is exactly how it starts. The first test. The first time they ask for money, or don't ask but make it clear they need it, and if you give it, then you've crossed a line and proven you're willing to cross it again. But I also thought about Noon, about her laugh and her intelligence and the way she looked at me like I mattered, about how different she was from the Bargirls and Freelancers in the stories. She had a job. She had her own life. She wasn't some desperate village girl fresh off the bus looking for a foreign sponsor. This was my girlfriend, or at least the woman I was sleeping with and spending all my time with, and her mom needed surgery. What kind of person would I be if I didn't help? I transferred her the money the next morning. Didn't even hesitate, really. Opened my banking app, converted the amount, sent it to her Thai bank account. She cried when I showed her the confirmation. Actually cried, tears running down her face, and she hugged me and said I was the kindest man she'd ever met. That most men would never do something like this. That she'd pay me back as soon as she could. I told her not to worry about paying me back. I could afford it. I had savings. This is what people do in relationships. They help each other. She showed me photos a week later. Her mom in a hospital room in Bangkok, sitting up in bed smiling, Noon next to her. The hospital looked real, the documents looked real, and I felt good about it. Felt like I'd actually helped someone, instead of just earning money and spending it on rent and food and nothing that mattered. But that first transfer opened a door. I didn't see it at the time, but looking back I can see exactly when things shifted. When I went from boyfriend to resource. It wasn't immediate. It was gradual. A month later, her younger brother needed tuition money for university, 10,000 baht. She mentioned it casually, said her family was struggling to cover it, said she was trying to help, but her salary only went so far. I transferred the money that same day. Then her condo management company charged her a penalty fee for something, 15,000 baht. She showed me the invoice all in Thai that I couldn't read, but it looked official enough. I paid it. Then her car broke down, needed new brakes and some other repairs I didn't understand. 25,000 baht. I covered it. Each time I hesitated a little less. Each time the transfer got easier. I wasn't being scammed, I told myself. This was just life. People have expenses. Families have emergencies. This is what you do when you care about someone. Emma had never needed my help back in Vancouver. She made her own money, paid her own way, never asked for anything. And yeah, that was admirable, that was independent and modern and all the things you're supposed to want. But it also made me feel useless, like I was just some guy she was dating until someone better came along, which is exactly what happened with River the yoga instructor. With Noon, I felt needed. I felt like a man, like I was actually providing something beyond just my presence and conversation. She'd thank me every time, tell me how grateful she was, how different I was from other men. And I'd feel good. feel like I was building something real. By March, I'd moved to a nicer place in Fromfong. The Sukhumvit studio was getting old, the broken elevator, the noise from the Sawyer, the feeling of living in a backpacker's temporary accommodation when I was planning to stay longer term. I found a 2-bedroom condo in a modern building with a pool and a gym and a lobby that didn't smell like garbage. 35,000 baht a month, about 1,000 Canadian, which was more than I'd been paying, but still less than my old Vancouver apartment. I told Noon about it and she seemed excited, said she could stay over more now, said having 2 bedrooms meant we wouldn't feel cramped. She did stay over more. 4 or 5 nights a week now. But never 7. Never a full week. She'd always have reasons to go back to her place. Had to grab clothes. Had to check on things. Had early morning plans with friends. I didn't push, but I noticed the pattern. Noticed how she was always available on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But Friday, Saturday, Sunday, she'd often be busy. Family stuff. Friend stuff. Girl stuff. And I'd sit in my nice new condo alone on weekend nights and wonder why my girlfriend wasn't with me. The sex was still incredible. That never changed. When she was there, when we were together, it felt real, felt intimate. She'd do this thing where she'd look me right in the eyes while we were having sex, this intense eye contact that made me feel seen and desired and connected. After, we'd lie in bed and talk about everything, our childhoods and our fears and our dreams, and those moments felt more real than anything I'd experienced with Emma in 2 years. I started meeting her friends more regularly. Ploy was 26, worked in a hotel or maybe a spa. The details were always vague. She was bubbly and touchy, always hugging people, always laughing too loud at jokes that weren't that funny. Nam was another, 28, quiet but pretty, said she was saving money to open a hair salon someday. And there were others, a rotating cast of Thai women in their 20s who all seemed to be friends with Noon, who'd join us when we went out to clubs in Thonglor or Ekamai. I noticed they all had foreign boyfriends, all of them. German, British, American, Australian. All older than their girlfriends by at least 5 years, usually more. All paying for everything when we went out. I'd watched the dynamics, the way the girls would order expensive cocktails and bottles of whiskey and the foreign guys would just hand over their credit cards without question. The way the girls would check their phones constantly, texting someone, always texting. The way they'd all leave early sometimes, one by one, with vague excuses about being tired or having early morning plans. I asked Noon about it once. Asked how all her friends ended up with foreign boyfriends. She said it just happened that way. That foreign guys were more open-minded than Thai men, more willing to date women without university degrees or women from poor families. She said Thai culture was very hierarchical, very judgmental, and foreign men didn't care about that stuff. I accepted that explanation because I wanted to, because the alternative was acknowledging what was obvious if I'd been willing to see it. Then one night in late March, everything started to crack. I was at a bar in Soi 11, a place called Levels or something generic like that. Noon had said she was visiting her family in Nakhon Ratchasima for the weekend, a 3-day trip she took every few months. I was there with a guy I'd met at a co-working space, another remote worker from Germany who'd been in Bangkok for a year. We were drinking beer and talking about visa runs and the best areas to live in the city when I saw her. Ploy. Noon's friend. She was at the bar with an older man, European looking, maybe 60, grey hair, expensive watch. She was wearing a tight dress and heels and sitting very close to him, her hand on his thigh. Our eyes met across the bar. Her face went pale. For a second, we just stared at each other, her frozen with her hand on this old man's leg, me frozen with my beer halfway to my mouth. Then she leaned over and said something to the man. He looked at me, looked back at her, said something. They stood up and left. Just left, abandoned their drinks and walked out into the Sukhumvit night. I sat there feeling my stomach twist. The German guy asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just saw someone I knew. But I wasn't fine. I was running through scenarios in my head. Maybe that was Ploy's dad. Maybe that was her uncle. Maybe that was her boss. But I knew. I knew exactly what I'd seen. Ploy was working. And if Ploy was working, if Ploy was a freelancer or Bargirl or whatever you wanted to call it, then what were the odds that all of Noon's friends were in the same business? What were the odds that Noon herself wasn't? I messaged Ploy later that night when I was back in my condo, 3 beers deep and unable to sleep. Kept it simple. Hey, saw you tonight. Is Noon really visiting her family? She didn't respond. I watched the message sit there as read for 20 minutes before I gave up and tried to sleep. She never replied. The next crack came a few days later. I'd been thinking about it constantly, about Ploy, about Noon's vague job, about the inconsistencies. I decided to do something I'd been too trusting or too scared to do before. I decided to visit Noon at work. She'd given me the address months ago, said her office was in a building near Silham, but she'd always discouraged me from visiting, said her boss was strict about personal guests, said it was just easier if we met after work. But I couldn't shake this feeling, this need to confirm she was who she said she was. I went on a Wednesday afternoon, took the BTS to Saladang, walked to the address she'd given me. It was a residential building, high-rise condo tower, no offices, no businesses, just condos. I stood on the sidewalk in the Bangkok heat, holding 2 iced coffees I'd bought from a nearby cafe and a bag of pastries from a French bakery, and felt that sick realization spreading through my chest like cold water. The security guard of the building looked at me expectantly. I asked him if there were any businesses operating in the building. He said no, only residential. I asked if he knew a company. I said the name Noon had mentioned months ago. He looked confused. Said no company like that here. I walked away, left the coffees and pastries on a bench at a bus stop because I couldn't hold them anymore. My hands were shaking. I called Noon straight to voicemail. I messaged her online. Where do you actually work? The message showed as read almost immediately. Then nothing. Minutes passed. 10 minutes. 20. Finally my phone rang. It was her. She sounded scared. Asked where I was. I told her I'd gone to her office, or tried to. There is no office, I said. There is no marketing company. What's going on? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she could explain. Said she was going to tell me. Said she didn't want me to judge her. Said she needed to see me in person. We agreed to meet that evening at a quiet restaurant in Ari, the same neighborhood where we'd had our first date, which felt like some kind of cruel poetry. I got there first. Ordered a beer I didn't drink. Watched it sweat on the table in front of me while I waited. She arrived 20 minutes late, which wasn't like her, wearing jeans and a t-shirt and no makeup. She looked younger without makeup. More vulnerable. We sat down and she didn't order anything, just looked at her hands on the table. I asked her to tell me the truth. All of it. She took a breath. Said okay. Said she'd been working up to this conversation for weeks, but never found the right time. Said yes, she used to work in the industry, bars, freelancing, since she was 23, right after she came back from California with a degree that didn't lead anywhere because the Thai job market was brutal and her family needed money. Said she'd tried to get out, tried to find normal work, but nothing paid even close to what she could make in a week in the bars. Said she'd been doing it for 4 years before she met me. I asked if she was still doing it. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. She said sometimes. Only when she really needed money. Only with guys she actually liked. Only because she had responsibilities I didn't understand. She said her family depended on her. Said her brother's tuition wasn't a one-time thing, it was every semester. Said her parents were in debt to loan sharks back in Isan. And if she didn't send money every month, they'd lose their land. Said her life wasn't simple like mine. She couldn't just quit a job and travel and figure things out. She had people counting on her. I asked about what we were. She said we were real. Said everything between us was real. Said the other guys were just business, just transactions. But with me, it was different. With me, it was actually something. I asked how I was supposed to believe that. How I was supposed to know I wasn't just another customer who got convinced he was special. She started crying. Said if I was just another customer, she wouldn't be sitting here crying. She wouldn't care what I thought. She'd just move on to the next one. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. Because if I didn't believe her, if I accepted that everything for the past 4 months had been a performance, then I was exactly the kind of idiot my friends had warned me about. Then I'd pissed away 15,000 Canadian dollars on medical bills and tuition and car repairs that might not even be real, all while thinking I was building a relationship when I was just subsidizing someone's income. So I chose to believe her. Or at least, I chose to act like one believed her. We agreed to start fresh, no more lies. She promised to be honest about everything. I promised not to judge her past. We went back to my condo and had emotional, desperate sex that felt like both of us trying to prove something, trying to convince ourselves that this was real, that what we had was bigger than the circumstances that brought us together. But trust, once cracked, doesn't heal cleanly. It was like trying to fix broken glass. You can glue the pieces back together, but you'll always see the cracks, always feel the edges. I started noticing everything. Started seeing patterns I'd been blind to before. The way she'd check her phone constantly and angle it away from me. The way she'd get messages at midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. The way she'd sometimes go to the bathroom for 20 minutes and come back looking distracted. I started checking her phone. I'm not proud of it, but I did it. When she'd be in the shower, I'd pick up her phone and try to open it, but she'd changed her passcode. When she'd fall asleep before me, I'd watch her fingers when she unlocked it in the morning, tried to memorize the pattern. I never got in, but the fact that I was trying, the fact that our relationship had become this thing where I was trying to catch her in lies, that told me everything I needed to know. I followed her one night. It was a Friday in early April. She'd said she had dinner plans with girlfriends. Said she'd stay at her place that night. I said okay, have fun. Then I followed her, took a taxi and told the driver to follow her taxi. Felt like a character in a bad movie, but I had to know. She went to a hotel bar in Sukhumvit, W Hotel, expensive place with expensive drinks. I watched from across the street, hiding behind a street vendor's cart like a stalker. She met a man, Asian, Japanese or Korean, hard to tell from where I was standing, older, 40s maybe. They had drinks, they laughed, they sat close. After about an hour they left together, walked into the hotel together, disappeared into the elevator together. I sat on the curb across the street and felt something inside me break. Not break like glass breaks, sudden and sharp. Break like wood breaks, slow and splintering and inevitable. I sat there for maybe an hour, watching people come and go from the hotel, couples and families and businessmen. The street vendor, whose cart I was sitting behind, eventually asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. He offered me water. I accepted it, drank it while watching the hotel entrance and waiting for noon to come back out. She didn't. Not while I was there. I went home to my empty condo in Phrom Phong, sat on my balcony and looked out at Bangkok. All those lights and buildings and millions of people living their lives, and felt more alone than I'd ever felt in Vancouver. At least in Vancouver I knew I was alone. Here I'd thought I'd found someone, thought I'd built something, and it turned out I'd just been paying for a girlfriend experience from someone who was very, very good at her job. I confronted her the next day, asked her to come over. She showed up in the afternoon, probably fresh from her hotel date, and I asked her straight up if she was still seeing clients. She didn't deny it, just sat on my couch and looked tired. Said yes. Said she tried to stop, but she couldn't afford to. Said if I could help her more, help her with more money, she wouldn't need to. Said she wished I understood how hard her life was, how different things were for Thai women, how expensive everything was, how much pressure she was under. I asked how much. How much would it take for her to stop? She said she didn't know. Maybe 50,000 baht a month, maybe more. I did the math. 1,800 Canadian dollars a month, 22,000 a year. I had the money. I could afford it. But something in me, some last shred of self-respect or sanity, said no. Said that if I started paying her a monthly allowance to be my girlfriend exclusively, then I wasn't her boyfriend anymore. I was her main client. I was just the guy who paid the most. She started crying again. Said she really cared about me. Said she wanted to make this work. Said if I just gave her some time, gave her some help, she could figure out a way to transition to normal work. I asked what normal work. She didn't have an answer. Just cried and said she didn't know. She'd figure something out, she just needed time. I realised, sitting there in my 35,000 baht a month condo watching this woman cry on my couch, that I'd been a client all along. A client who got confused and thought he was a boyfriend. A client who paid for dinners and trips and medical bills and tuition and car repairs and convinced himself it was love. A client who broke every single rule he'd set for himself because the fantasy felt better than reality. The thing that hurt the most wasn't even the money. I'd spent maybe 25,000 Canadian over 4 months. That was manageable. I still had about 65,000 in the bank. I could recover from that. What hurt was the trust, the realization that my instincts were garbage. That I couldn't tell the difference between someone who cared about me and someone who was working me. That I'd been so desperate for connection, so desperate not to be lonely, that I'd ignored every red flag and convinced myself I was special. I asked Noon to leave. She asked if we were done. I said I didn't know, said I needed to think. She left, and I sat in my empty condo and thought about my options. I could stay in Bangkok, keep seeing her, accept the arrangement for what it was, and keep paying for something that felt like love, even though I knew it wasn't. Or I could leave, go back to Vancouver, face my friends and my mum, and admit that I'd become exactly what they'd warned me about. I spent 3 days thinking about it. 3 days of barely leaving my condo, ordering food delivery, sitting on my balcony and watching Bangkok and feeling like a fool. Noon texted me constantly, said she missed me, said she was sorry, said she loved me. That last one broke something. The word love. She'd never said it before. And now she was saying it when we both knew it was a lie, or at least we both knew I knew it was a lie, and it felt like an insult, like she was testing how stupid I really was. I booked a flight home, May 2nd. 3 weeks away. I didn't tell Noon immediately. Just booked it and stared at the confirmation email and felt nothing. No relief, no regret, just this empty numbness. I told her a few days later, said I was leaving. She asked if she could see me before I left. I said yes. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I just wanted to see her one more time. Maybe I was hoping she'd say something that would make sense of everything, that would make the last 4 months feel less like a waste. She came over the night before my flight. It was late, past midnight. I'd been packing all day, my life in Bangkok condensed back into 2 suitcases and a backpack. She showed up wearing a dress I'd bought her, a blue sundress we'd gotten at Chatuchak Market on one of our early dates. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. She cried. Asked me not to go. Said we could make it work. Said she'd quit everything, find real work, be the girlfriend I wanted. I asked how. How exactly would she do that? She didn't have an answer. Just cried more and said she'd figure it out. Said she really did love me. Said these 4 months had been the best of her life. Said most guys just wanted sex, but I'd actually treated her like a person, like she mattered. I almost believed her, almost unpacked my suitcases and told her, okay, let's try. But I didn't, because I realized something sitting there with her crying in my arms. Even if she was being honest, even if she really did care about me in some way, we'd never be equals. I'd always be the foreign guy with money, and she'd always be the Thai woman who needed it. Every dinner, every trip, every nice thing I did for her would have this shadow over it, this question of whether she was with me, because she wanted to be, or because she couldn't afford not to be. And I couldn't live like that. Couldn't build a relationship on that foundation. I told her I was sorry, that I cared about her too, that I hoped she found what she was looking for. I went to my wallet and pulled out 20,000 baht, about 700 Canadian, more than she'd probably expected. I put it on the coffee table and said this was for her, not for her family or her brother or her car, just for her. She looked at the money and then at me, and something in her face changed. The tears stopped. The vulnerability disappeared. She became someone else for a second, someone harder, someone who'd done this before. She took the money, put it in her purse, thanked me, and left. I sat in my empty condo for the rest of the night. Didn't sleep. Just sat there listening to Bangkok outside my window, the motorbikes and music and life continuing like I'd never been part of it. At 6 in the morning, I grabbed my bags and took a taxi to the airport. The city looked different in the early light, still beautiful, still chaotic, but foreign in a way it hadn't felt in months. I'd thought I'd belonged here, thought I'd found something real. Turned out I'd just been a tourist playing at expat life, paying for connection and calling it love. The flight back to Vancouver was 14 hours. I watched movies I didn't register, ate food I didn't taste, and thought about everything. About how I'd sworn I'd never fall for a freelancer and then did exactly that. About how I'd thought I was smarter than the other guys, more aware, more careful. About how loneliness makes you stupid in ways that intelligence can't protect you from. About how I'd spent $25,000 and 4 months of my life learning what my friends could have told me for free over a beer. I landed in Vancouver on a grey May afternoon. My mom picked me up from the airport. She took one look at me and hugged me without saying anything. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't say I told you so. just helped me load my suitcases into her car and drove me to her house in New Westminster. She set me up in my old bedroom, the same room I'd had as a teenager, and made me tea and told me I could stay as long as I needed. I've been back 2 months now. Got a contract job through a recruiting agency, financial software development for a startup, pays $60,000 a year, which is less than half what I used to make, but it's something. I'm rebuilding, slowly. The money will come back eventually. I'm young enough that 4 months and $25,000 isn't a disaster, just an expensive lesson. But the trust is harder. The ability to believe people when they say they care. The ability to accept kindness without wondering what someone wants from me. That's what Noon in Bangkok took that I'm not sure I'll get back. I think about her sometimes. Wonder if she's with someone new now, some other foreign guy who thinks he's special. Wonder if any of it was real for her, even a little bit. Wonder if she thinks about me. Probably not. Probably I was just another customer who paid well for a few months and then left. No different from the hundreds before me or the hundreds after. The worst part is don't even hate her. I understand her. Understand that she was doing what she needed to do to survive in a system that didn't give her many options. Understand that maybe she did care about me in whatever way she was capable of caring, while also seeing me as a resource. People are complicated. Situations are complicated, but understanding doesn't make it hurt less. I broke my own rules. I fell for exactly what I swore I wouldn't fall for. And now I'm back in Vancouver, living with my mom and working a job that barely pays my student loans and trying to figure out how to trust anyone ever again. That's the real cost. Not the money. The belief that I know the difference between real and performance. The belief that I can trust my own judgment. Noon didn't just take my money. She took my confidence in myself. And maybe that's what I really paid for. Not a girlfriend experience. A lesson about who I am when I'm lonely and scared and desperate to feel like I matter. Turns out I'm exactly like every other guy who's made this mistake. Not special, not different. Just another Mark who thought the rules didn't apply to him until they did. Ryan's story ends where it started, with him back in Vancouver, older if not wiser, carrying the weight of a mistake he'll probably never fully shake. The money he'll earn back, the pride takes longer, but he's doing the work, taking it day by day. And maybe that's all any of us can do after we've learned the hard way, that sometimes the heart wants what it wants, even when the head knows better. And sometimes the price of that lesson is higher than we ever imagined paying. If you've got a story like Ryan's, or if you've watched someone you care about make this same mistake, drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if this story hit home, if you saw yourself in Ryan's choices and his justifications and his slow slide into exactly what he swore he'd never do, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the only way to avoid the trap is to hear about someone else walking into it first. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, the rules exist for a reason, and thinking you're the exception is usually the first step toward becoming another cautionary tale.